Hello, everybody. Cindy Ashton here for Bringing Broadway to France. And what are we doing that? We are bridging humanity, one story, one song, one musical at a time. This truly is the bridge across humanity, across the Atlantic, for humanity, for resilience, for music, and celebration of all that is good in the world. Hello, and welcome to this episode with one of my bestest friends in the whole wide world, Christopher Wilson. Hi, Christopher.
Hello, all the way from Toronto on Canada Day. Oh, Canada, terre de nos aïeux. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
And scene. End of the podcast. Just kidding. Okay, so before we dive into Christopher, he is one of the most remarkable human beings, and not just because he's been my best friend for almost 25 years. But this is a man that has literally done everything musical, theater, and beyond. We are talking singer, dancer, actor, artistic director. I'm probably going to, miss some roles. So you're going to have to help me. Choreographer, composer, and we're going to talk about the show that made it to NYC. I know that I'm missing a whole bunch. And of course, when he's not on stage and screen, he has film stuff as well. He has literally been in 76 Trombones, Music Man, the movie with Kristin, Chenoweth, and many other stars. And so he has literally done everything you could possibly imagine in the entertainment world. A true treasure on this planet, not only my best friend, but truly somebody that I think has the biggest heart for humanity and stands up for causes and makes a difference in this planet. So Christopher, I love you. A bushel and a peck. Hi.
Hello, Cindy. Where are you right now? What's happening? Where are you? Tell me.
Where am I?
Where is the sparkle dust and the Broadway
Where
glam?
art thou? Da, da. This is not classical. This is musical theater. Cindy, stop. All right. So where art thou? I'm currently in Nice, which is normally a beautiful place in the south of France, except for we're having a heat wave and my air conditioner broke down and
So
it's a whole thing.
Heat wave burning on your skin. And you're in France and I'm in Canada, and I see you across a large ocean.
Across a large ocean. As you can all imagine, whenever I go, back to my hometown of Toronto, there's lots of mischief to be had between Christopher and I.
Lots of mischief making. Musical mischief making.
Musical mischief. So, musical mischief. How the heck did you even start as a singer, dancer, actor? Was it just that you were taking lessons, or did you always know?
Yeah, I came out of the womb. Singing, dancing. My mother was like, "Get out!" There's all of the punching of her womb and her uterus. She's like, "Get out!" And my earliest memories of the first time I put on a show was actually at our local barbershop. This lovely Italian man named Fred, probably Frederico, at this great barbershop. And he used to let me, I don't know why I was fascinated with this, like sweep the hair, the sweepings of the hair after the haircut.
I feel like this is like little shop of horrors.
Totally. And I would end up using the broom kind of like it was my dance partner.
I could have danced all night.
Totally. And I was like, so that's kind of like I was putting on shows. It's the earliest memory I have of me entertaining a barbershop. We did barbershop singing and by the light of the silvery moon. Anyway, so I was having a great time. And then I remember distinctly when I saw the television show Fame with Miss Lydia Grant. She's like, "You want fame? Well, fame starts. And right here's where you start paying with sweat. Fame, I'm gonna live forever." Yeah. Leroy, all those characters, Coco. And I saw this performing, this, a television version of this High School for the Performing Arts. And I was like, that's me. It resonated with my soul. Perhaps I'm a cliche, but it just like literally, I was like those are my people. That is my vibe. So anything in my life, my parents, incredible blue collar worker, amazing. My father taught high school English for 35 years. My mom was a nurse, a health practitioner, and just incredible, supportive, loving people. But they weren't necessarily immersed in the arts, but they provided everything that I could. Actually, it's funny. I remember in high school, I ended up going to a high school for the performing arts, and my dad, a lot of parents have to motivate their kids, but my parents had to demotivate me. Because I think when I was like in my third year of high school, I was studying piano, voice, cello,
Yeah.
jazz, tap, ballet, plus homework, plus orchestras and choirs and shows at school, plus community theater, plus I was a grade 8, like straight A student. And it was just because I found the thing that I loved. And my dad was like, how about like, I don't know, watching cartoons on a Saturday morning? I'm like, no, I got to go to the theater. I got to go to the studio. I got to be a performer. I got to give the people
Dance.
I got to give the people what they want. Anyway, so I was very blessed that I found my passion very early. We know it's a hard, nobody knows the trouble I've seen. It's a tough go being an artist. But here I am, almost 53, and I've been doing it for 30 plus years. And I was just saying, I was at an audition last week, and I said to someone, I don't know at this point if it's the most talented or last man standing. I kind of have a feeling that it's the latter. It's more last man standing. And it was funny because this young man looked at me and he said, but there's a real testament for resilience and having a career through resilience. I was like, you know what? I'll take that. We stick to it, which is in alignment exactly with what you're doing. Yeah. Bringing the Broadway to Europe, to la France.
En France.
Yeah. So that was it. I mean,
yeah. Because, you know, the French bees and French.
Well, like because when we speak the French de la France, we must use our lips like this. As we say in French, like a canard, like a duck.
Come canard, not canard, but canard.
Canard, bonjour, Cindy. But no, that answers it. I mean, I literally, any time that I saw, it's funny, I remember also arguing with my grandmother about, she wanted to watch hockey and I wanted to watch figure skating. So anything that was creative, anything that was expressive, my heart just opened. And funny story, I remember the first choir solo I had in elementary school. It was a song called The Monotone Angel. And I had this one solo. They were like, sing, sing, sing. And I was like, Gloria in excelsis Deo, Gloria in excelsis Deo. Because I was the monotone angel. I could only sing one note. Grade 5.
It kind of makes me think, sing Johnny one note. Johnny got only one sing note, and the note was, ah!
Totally. Yeah, so I've just been really blessed that, you know, I went to high school for the performing arts. I started working professionally in theater when I was in my last year of high school. I was 18 with a Canadian national tour. I studied all my formal education after high school was in classical singing, but I was doing musical theater. I started my own theater company when I was in my early 20s, became an independent producer. A professional choral singer. So I've been so blessed, and one of the biggest parts of my life now is arts education. So not only do I do musical theater, but I get to teach the artistry of musical theater and help new emerging artists discover their own artistic voice, their own creative voice, their own writing voice. It's a really blessed time. Yeah, it's really, 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 really fun, especially at a time when the world is so crazy. The world is so crazy around us. But we gotta live the dream. We gotta shine the light. We gotta be the light. Namaste. Back to you.
And so it is. All right. So yes, my question to you then, because you've done your work, your resume is so prolific. So prolific.
Bless.
But you're also super freaking talented. And so my question to you is, what are some of your, like, what's your favorite role you've ever played in a musical?
Favorite role I ever played in a musical, I hope I get to do it again, because when I did it, I was too young to do it, is Don Quixote de la Mancha, Don Miguel de Cervantes from the musical The Man of La Mancha. To dream the impossible dream. But I did it when I was 30, so I was kind of the boy of La Mancha. But this timeless, beautiful score, I mean, you know, with iconic classic songs, Robert Goulet did the role years ago, who's also Canadian. And it was just something about the spirituality of it. You know, the whole thing is set in the Spanish Inquisition and the conquistadors. And this man, Don Miguel de Cervantes, he's actually, in the context of the musical, he's a prisoner. And in order to escape the craziness, he creates a world within the prison, which is de la Mancha. and he becomes this knight, Don Quixote, and he meets his love interest, this woman named Aldonza. She's actually a prostitute, but he calls her Dulcinea, and he's got this sidekick friend named Sancho. And I think it's the spirituality of it. It's about, even in the midst of all of this nastiness, it's an age-old ideal that even in the midst of difficult things, we're still staying close to our heart space and shining a light and keeping that optimism that everything is impossible. I mean, the song says it, right? To dream the impossible dream. You look at something that is potentially unattainable, unrealistic, unimaginable, but you have this vision and you have a heart and you bring a community that attaches to that, and you can manifest beautiful things. So I think that was definitely one of the highlights of my performing arts career. But I think I'm actually age specific to play it now. So I might have to put on my own concert and star myself. Nepotism at its best.
I think that you should do nepotism at your best. I
Sure.
mean, yeah.
Nepotism, the musical.
Nepotism, the musical. Okay. So we're going to manifest that for you. Nepotism, the musical, as well as you getting in Man de la Mancha. Maybe we'll do
La Man de la Mancha. But I think...
I can't even speak English today. Go on.
Just the Man de la Mancha. La Man de la Mancha.
L'homme de la Mancha. Okay.
L'homme de la Mancha. See. But one thing I just sort of tapped on, musical theater is such a diverse art form. And in terms of what we have as part of the musical theater canon, the repertoire out there, you can have something super, like something we call a jukebox musical, which is one of the most prolific one was Mamma Mia, of course, which was all created around the music of ABBA. So basically they created a story about a mother who used to be in a singing trio with her two girlfriends and her daughter Sophie. And she had three significant partners, and Sophie doesn't know which one of them is her dad. And to tell that story, they use the iconic music of ABBA. So you've got, music that was created in the pop genre that's then catered or tailored, made purpose for musical theater. And then you've got something like Men of La Mancha, where, you've got this incredible heart story about this character. So, I mean, for people that just love, one of the biggest hits right now that's actually in Toronto was And Juliet. It's a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, again, through jukebox pop music. And they're super entertaining. But I have a feel, I tend to gravitate towards repertoire that is sort of, self-contained in terms of story. Wicked was a brilliant example. As you briefly alluded to, years ago, it was 2002. I was fortunate enough to be in the ABC Disney film The Music Man in the ensemble, and Matthew Broderick was playing Harold Hill and Kristin Chenoweth. Kristin had already won her Tony for Sally in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. But it was funny, she was lovely. She was lovely and open, and we figured out our commonalities in opera, and we were chatting at the lunch table one day, and she says, so I'm doing this really interesting workshop right now. So again, this is 2002. She said, I'm doing this really interesting workshop. I don't know if you're familiar with the book. It was a prequel to The Wizard of Oz. It's called Wicked. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's a really, really fascinating
gosh. Wow.
But I just remember that. And then, of course, in the fall of 2003, it opened, and here we are like 20 plus years later. So it's just really cool to see, the types of musical theater that exists in the canon, how it impacts people in different ways, both as a performer and an audience member. And as an arts educator and also a director and a theater producer, it's lovely. Like, I'm actually considering producing a concert, funding pending. There's been a brilliant revival of ragtime on Broadway currently. And one of my favorite singers, Joshua is his name, the lead, who's playing TJ. My gosh, it eludes me the name of the lead character. I'm a horrible musical theater thesaurus right now. Horrible. Anyway, he won the Tony for Best Male Performance in a Musical. And it talks about these factions. It talks about Jewish immigrants. It talks about the Black diaspora, and it talks about the wealthy white Americans. And again, I mean, that's, based in the early 1900s, and here we are, 2026, and we've got those exact same racial divides. Yeah. So, to think that this revival has been it's not surprising to me that the revival, not only is it a beautiful piece of work, and the music's amazing, and funny, Cassie Levy, who played Elsa in Frozen, who's also Canadian, also got the Tony for playing the mother in that role. But again, it's interesting how something that was written back by Live Entertainment because I know you have a history with the iconic Canadian company called Live Entertainment under the conspicuous impresario named Garth Dobrinsky. But back in the 90s, there was a company in Canada that was developing huge shows like Kiss of the Spider Woman, Showboat, Ragtime, to name sort of the top three. So it's interesting how something can be written at a certain time, come back 20 plus years later, and maybe even have even more relevance, you know, depending on the way. I mean, I don't know if that's a good or a negative, or if it just is a statement on humanity. But
I mean, it's a statement of the power of musical theater. A statement of the power of that.
I remember
go ahead.
I was just going to say, my partner Pablo, he's from Santiago, Chile, and yes, he's in earshot currently, and he's giving me the stink eye. But he does talk like Sofia Vergara from Modern Family. You know, I said, Pablo, I want to go see this show. He's like, is there singing? I'm like, yes. He's like, you go on yourself. You know, go by yourself. It's fine. Go find someone who loves that more than I do. But the thing is, so for Pablo actually, he loves theater, but he prefers to see a play than he does a musical. You know, because some people can't sort of get their head around the convention that, you know, why would people sing? Like, it's so, if they don't buy into the world, it's like over the top for them. But the idea is that in musical theater, in the construction of a musical storytelling, when you get to the point where you can't say anymore, you either have to physically inhabit it with dance, or you need to sing it. But I think he's become a bit more. He's become a little bit more open to the concept of the theater musicale. Yes.
Wonderful, darling. Oh my gosh. Okay, so a couple of things, comments. Garth Dobrinsky. So here's the funny thing: is that during that time period, I was working for him as an apprentice on the live ed shows.
Right.
And it was really crazy because Jason Robert Brown was not known at the time. I literally, and I'm so upset about this still, is that I literally, because I was working on his show and a few others, including Leslie, great Canadian composer, Leslie Arden's show, which on Martin Guerre. And I still remember at that point that that was just before that all that blew up in the media and everything went crashing. But I was so sad because after my dad passed last year, we went through his house and because I keep moving countries, it's a thing. I had all the scores from before, you know, Songs of a New World with Jason Robert Brown had become popular. I was one of the people working as an apprentice on the workshop version.
Oh, that's the show he was developing with Songs for a New World.
Yes, and it was his very first, like, and here I am thinking all these years I've got like tens of thousands of dollars worth of like scores in my house, and somehow or another somebody threw them out. It was my own fault for not taking them everywhere I went with me. I know. I would have kept it though and not sold it, but it was so valuable. I'm like, this is the original stuff with his writing on it and my writing on it. I'm like, damn it. Anyways.
Wow. Well, I mean, what a story. What a story to be there when someone's an emerging artist and cutting their teeth and you're at ground level, and then they, you know, some of the best are, you know.
I actually sang the other day one of his songs, "A New Day, Far Across the Ocean," and he actually commented on it and shared it out. And I was like, he probably doesn't remember who I am from 30 years ago, but it's fine. I was not.
You know what? I'm actually friends with Jason on. We're not friends, but I've met him.
Yeah, such a lovely.
And we're friends on social media, and we've had a couple interactions. He's very approachable. Yeah. So I'm sure if you send him a message, he'd actually quite appreciate the throwback.
You know, I got to do that. I say, by the way, can I have the original scores again so I can sell them? I'm kidding.
Yeah.
So the other piece that you brought up is around the humanity part and the storytelling and how it comes back. Because unfortunately, our world doesn't seem to learn when we have tragedies. We just seem to amplify them, make them worse, or bring them back, or all three of them. So I think about Living with Henry. Now, for those of you listening, watching, you're like, what's Living with Henry? Unless, of course, you know Christopher. Living with Henry is a musical that Christopher wrote lyrics, the lyrics, the melodies, like completely wrote this musical, produced it, pitched it for the New York City Musical Theater, help me out with this, Musical Theater Festival.
Yeah.
I got it right. You know, hormonal brain sometimes is like, what did I just say? Embracing menopause, people. But I remember today. That's good. So, you know, ended up being only 1 of 10 in that season.
Yeah.
And getting reviews all over New York. And like, who does that? I'm so proud of you. But what is living with Henry? Because when we talk about social change, when we talk about commenting on what is happening in the world, this is what living with Henry did. Tell our listeners and our viewers all about it. I'm so excited for them to learn.
Sure. Well, the entry point, I think, the biggest thing that comes to mind, because it's such a cornerstone of contemporary musical theater, and has a really sad and heartbreaking and heartfelt story. So when Jonathan Larson wrote Rent, you know, he started out that show like it wasn't even off Broadway, or I think, you know, it was a production, and then it went off Broadway, and it was his retelling of the story of La Boheme, the opera based on Puccini. And but it was told through the lens of what was happening in New York at the time in the late 80s and early 90s, which was the HIV crisis. Yeah. So, you know, there was at the time there was tuberculosis happening, and Pablo, sorry, my boyfriend's watching television. It's loud. We're having an interview here, Pablo. An interview. How dare you? So when Jonathan Larson wrote this show, you know, he was taking a story concept that he already was familiar with and giving it a voice through a very, very, very difficult time in queer histories, particularly gay, the male gay population that got so detrimentally impacted at the height of the AIDS crisis. And then he went on to have his show transplanted to Broadway. And on opening night of the show, he had a aneurysm and died the day of.
That was so...
I mean, you can't even imagine, like, his dream was to get his show on Broadway, and the day of opening, the afternoon, he had an aneurysm that claimed his life. And I can't even imagine sort of what that would have catalyzed in the house with the actors, like the enormity of emotion and passion. I mean, they did the show. They opened the show, and they sang their frickin' patooties off. So that's sort of an entry point for the show. So I was diagnosed as HIV positive in 2002, the exact same time that I was doing The Music Man, the movie. And obviously a very traumatic happening in my life. And I met an amazing counselor at the time. And she said, just because of who you are, Christopher, you're just so open, you're gregarious. I think that for you, you really need to figure out what HIV looks like in your life and what your relationship is with it. So I took that challenge very seriously. And being an actor, I lived with a lot of roommates, because you gotta share on rent. And I used HIV as an acronym, and I realized that I was living with a roommate. So the virus was in my body. So the shared space was my body. But I used HIV as an acronym, and I named my roommate Henry Ignatius Vaillancourt. Henry Ignatius Vaillancourt. And it was a way of taking this really scary thing that was part of my life now, externalizing it, giving it a little bit of distance, and saying, now I'm living with Henry. And I was like, living with Henry? I was like, well, that sounds like a play title, a Pulitzer Prize winning book. And I just started journaling. About my experiences in my life, and then those journals turned into lyrics, and then those lyrics turned into songs. And ultimately, the biggest catalyst that really motivated me writing the story was the devolution, the breakup of my marriage, which is the time at which I met you, Cindy. So I was married to a man, and I had a huge health scare. I was learning a lot about myself. I didn't take care of my HIV, and I ended up having full-blown AIDS illness in 2007. Came through it. I mean, this is the big joke. You know, I said to you about that audition that a lot of people say, you know, is it the most talented or last man standing? Well, I had surgery, and this is my trach scar, but I tell everyone this is my belly button because I've had so many facelifts. Or it's the perfect opportunity to say, oh, Cindy, I love your show. And I love Broadway. Keep doing the good work.
Yeah,
So
I love you, darling.
it's so wrong. Harvey Firestein smoking to his trick. Anyway, but let's move beyond that. So the point was, I ended up writing the show. And in 2011, I formalized it. I gave myself a task. I applied to the Toronto Fringe Festival and got in.
Yeah.
And challenged myself to write this show with a lot of love, a lot of support through smart dramaturgs and directors. And it had its premiere in 2011. And then in January, I had a secondary run of the show where we tweaked it a little bit. And then in 2012, I applied to the now defunct, sadly, but the New York Musical Theater Festival, and was picked as one of the top, like, as you said, 8 to 10, I can't remember exactly it was because it's been a while, shows, and was picked, and the idea was that it was a contemporary look at what HIV looks like. And ironically, one of the biggest contributors in queer culture, especially gay male culture right now, is prolific drug abuse. And at the time, maybe this was before PrEP existed, which is prophylactic medication to prevent HIV negative people of being exposed to the virus. But basically, at the time I was writing the show in like, as I said, around 2012, there was a lot of HIV transmission due to reckless sexual practices instigated by drug use. But the interesting thing was, I wrote this show from a lens of I'm living with HIV. But the feedback I got from patrons, like, I wrote from a very specific lens. But
Yeah.
Henry represented to other people some huge thing in their life that they had to negotiate.
Oh my gosh.
Depression, cancer, mental illness, like trauma, like surgical trauma. Like, Henry was that fuck off thing that was on their shoulder that they couldn't necessarily get rid of, but they had to learn to integrate in their life to live with peacefully. Yeah. And people would come up to me after shows in New York and say, "You just helped me meet my Henry, or my Henrietta, and I was like, what? So what was, for lack of a better term, began as like a therapeutic, a music therapeutic journey for me, became artistry meeting people in therapeutic ways from an audience perspective. And that was mind-blowing to me, because it really speaks to what you said about what the value of storytelling is and how it can impact other people. And if I may just segue, I had an incredible journey with a second show that I wrote.
Can I pin that for 2 seconds?
Absolutely.
All right. So I just really want to reinforce that whole piece, which you just reinforced around, we never know when we create. There's a few things in here, especially for people who are rising artists and they're not at our level. I mean, although I'm still learning, you're still learning, but they haven't gotten to professional level like us. We never know the impact of our work.
Never.
We never know the impact of our work.
Nope.
And but the best work that we do is the stuff that comes from the raw truth and the pain and the joy and all of the rainbow, and really being committed to letting ourselves go through the muck and out on the other side to create. And when we do that, and we do it honestly, and we face ourselves and we face our demons, it's the hardest and most liberating freaking thing you can do. But it's so true that, your work has transcended just people with HIV. It has now hit anybody that has their Henry. Mm-hmm. And that is fucking brilliant, my darling. Fucking brilliant.
Mm. Well, so I have actually I have a title for I have a working title for a concept that I'm milling about. I've been very reticent to touch it because it's deep. I seem to write trauma-informed art. I don't know if that's what makes it impactful, but
we need more of it though in this world.
Well, I did mention that back in the mid 2012, like, one of the biggest attributing factors to HIV spread in New York was drug abuse. So I ended up years later being in a relationship with an individual who struggled with drug abuse. So the working title for this musical that I may or may not write is called "Till Meth Do Us Part."
Oh.
which I think is a really brilliant title. And I do, now that I'm putting it out into the world, I better write it before it gets stolen.
You have to write it now.
But
you know, I'm happy to read and give feedback. So,
thank you.
All right. So I want to talk about 3 more things.
Sure.
I want to talk about the musical that you found changed the world, brought to humanity. And then I want to talk about, it just slipped my brain. And then I want to talk about advice. Yeah, I want to talk about artistry, because I think there's a lot of artists who are probably listening to this who are like, how did you do this? How did you, like, some of the advice we can give them. Sure. And I'll remember the second thing at some point, or not. If it's relevant, it will come up. So let's talk about 2 kittens and a kid.
So one of the amazing things I had as a life chapter, which continues in a new way, was parenting. So at the time I was married to my previous husband, when I was ill, I actually also became an adoptive parent. And my daughter, what's significant about this is my daughter is a woman of color. And so I was married, as you can see, I'm a Caucasian man, cis white male, and I was married to another cis white identifying male, and we adopted a Black 11-year-old teenage girl. So 2 gay white dads and a teenage daughter. And I also mentioned that Pablo sounds like Sofia Vergara, and this was before Modern Family was even on the air. So like we were trending, because same-sex marriage had only been constitutionalized in Canada in 2003, and we were married in 2004. And by 2006, my daughter had come to live with us. So a crazy journey. I mean, so there's just the idea of being a gay man, a gay white man raising a teenage Black girl. So like black hair, black skincare, menstruation. I mean, I write in the play, I was like, I don't go near lady bits at the best of times, let alone having the ability to explain their biological function to a teenage girl. So there was a lot going on there. Now, what was interesting is that at the time she moved in with us, my ex-husband got her 2 kittens, random. Like, let's just make this a cozy family. So not 1, but 2 kittens. So I had this working adventure title about called 2 Kittens and a Kid. So that was the thing. But the punchline at the beginning of the show was that my ex-husband, who you know, actually years later in the marriage left me, and then I found out that he had left me for a woman. So what I say in the show was, when my daughter moved in, my husband got her 2 kittens. 3 years later, she ran away for the first time. 6 months later, he left me for a woman, and I was left with the pussies. So, but this again was a living journal, and my daughter came into my life. There's some themes here because her parents struggled with addiction, and ultimately my daughter herself had a journey with addiction, which I'm happy to report she has overcome through incredible strength, resiliency, and work. And she now has a vibrant, beautiful 5-year-old daughter who is my granddaughter. So I'm Papa Chris to my granddaughter. But the point was, it was really interesting to tell not her story, but my story as a parent raising her. You know, negotiating black hair, learning about skincare, learning about hair, figuring out menstruation, learning about boys, learning about when she was dating a girl. And then ultimately about mental health and addiction, because she came into my life with a whole bunch of her own trauma based on her family things. But it was just an opportunity, again, when things were really tough for her, I again went to writing to find a way to express all of this emotion and find an outlet for it. And that one also ended up in New York. I had a wonderful performance that you attended, I think, at Don't Tell Mom.
Yes. I was so happy at Don't Tell Mom. Don't Tell Mom.
Yeah, so amazing. I've just been really blessed. So I've got, you know, a one-man show and it toured the world. I started at the Edinburgh Fringe. I went to New York, all over Ontario. So I've been very blessed, and I've learned a lot about a lot of things. And it's really cool as an artist who has predominantly been a performer, interpreting other people's work to bring your own work to the stage and see. And that was also really cool. When I did Living with Henry, like, I wrote it a certain way, but the actor embodying the character that you've put on page is fighting for their own story. So they bring like something, or they say, that doesn't make sense. Like, why would you do that? And I'm like, but I did. It's like, but I'm interpreting the page. And I'm like, oh yeah, right. Like so like, it's almost like if you want therapy and you don't want to pay for it, write a show about your life, give it to a group of really smart actors, and just let it unfold. It was like, epiphany, light bulb explosion.
That's
It was
brilliant.
incredible. Yeah, it was really cool.
That's brilliant. That's a really great tip, actually. Who needs $500 an hour for therapy?
Yeah, well, I mean, you've done
When
similar
you just
things.
write it down, play, get people to act it, give them your perspectives, and like, boom, you're healed. Okay.
And they pay for it, and the audience pays for it. So again, you make
And the
money
audience
off
pays
it.
for
It's like
it.
you don't have to pay for the therapy. It's all built
I
in.
love that. Get Your Therapy Paid For by Christopher Wilson. Here's the how-to book. I love it. Oh my gosh.
So that's my
Okay.
first advice to emerging artists. Write down your life story and then produce it. So.
There you go. Write down there's your first tip for artists. Yeah. You know, since we're on that topic, and then we will get to the other couple of things. I will say that artists have to, especially in today's day and age, take hold of their careers.
Yeah.
Because, you know, way back in our day, now I didn't do auditioning because of illness and stuff like that. I had to find alternative ways to get myself booked.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of artists, we go to theater school like I did, right? I went to Randolph Academy for the Performing Arts. And we're being taught how to get an agent and how to audition, which didn't work for me because I was chronically ill. Mm-hmm. But that seems to still be the thing, is like, this is how you develop a career. But especially with all the crazy going on in the world, budget cuts, all these issues in film and television, everything, like, we actually as artists do not have to take the status quo. We can actually own our own voices. Mm-hmm. And you do that by what you've done, Christopher, bringing this back to what you said, is you're like, I'm actually going to use my artistry, not just to actually get paid to do stuff. I am, you know, I'm not saying don't get paid, but relying on other people to give you work is awesome, but rely on yourself too, is what I'm saying. And what you did and what you just said to me and what I heard is that you went out there, you got funding, you went out there, you wrote something, you healed through that. Other people healed through that. And you then became an entrepreneur artist, not just an artist that is waiting and hoping. And I think that is so fucking important, more than ever.
I agree. I love that term, an entrepreneurial artist, because, you know, you just can't wait for someone to give you the opportunities that you want. You know, you want to be in community with other artists. You want to be compensated for your work. You want to be able to pay your bills, put a roof over your head, you know, all eat. Legit and really important. But, you know, one thing that I it's strange, it's coming sort of to me in real time, you know, because artists that are emerging now, like in their late teens, early 20s, are so consumed by and consumed with social media. You know, so much of our world is virtual. And I think people lose sight of what that live interaction really is. The joy of being in a room, be it like 20 people or 200 people in a space, sharing breath, sharing air, sharing space, sharing heartbeat, sharing community. You know, like that. This is why, I mean, sometimes I wish I was more passionate about film and TV, because Lord knows that's where the money is. Yeah. But I've always been a stage animal, and it's the intimate connection and the real-time connection that you get. That's why it's not, you know, it's not DVD forever. That's an antiquated term. No, it's not digital forever, right? You know, a live stage performance.
Yeah.
What's a DVD? Diva, very diva. But you know, a live performance, even if you're doing a Broadway run, doing 8 shows a week, each show is different, right? You bring you have different energy, you have different fatigue, you have it's different. And I really encourage young artists to take breaks from the interwebs, because when you're constantly inundated, like I remember when we were kids, Cindy, when you and I were kids, baby girl, you know, we didn't have the internet. You know, if we were, you remember what that was like, kiddo. You know, when we were babes, you know,
we're like without the internet.
No, you know, like we were in high school.
Yeah.
This didn't exist. I didn't get my first email account until I was in university. So, what I was going to say was that kids need to take a break from the internet, because when we were young, everyone compares themselves to everyone else. That's just human nature. It's a really crappy part of who we are in our molecular structure, but we do. We compare ourselves to others, keeping up with the Joneses. So if we're feeling competitive or feeling less than, and we hear, I don't know, like at a music festival, we're in the Kiwanis Music Festival or a musical theater festival, and we hear someone else singing the same song. Now a kid can go online and hear 100 to 1,000 kids around the world singing that same song. And, oh, I'm not good enough, and, oh, I'm never gonna, and that limiting belief, and that, because young artists are young. And if anyone's listening to this, I don't say that with an ounce of condescension. You are finding your way in the world. You are finding your way in your body and your sexuality and your expressivity. There's so much being figured out between like 18 years of age to 25. You're just at the beginning of your journey. But the thing I believe that a lot of young artists don't get reinforcement in is trusting their own individual, unique, special self. And yes, that person, to your perception, may sing something better, but I mean, that applies to anything. Someone will always be running faster. Someone will always be skinnier. Someone will always be, whatever it is. But whatever a young artist needs to stay connected to source, and that involves filtering out the noise. And even as I'm saying this and looking at myself in the screen, I'm saying, Christopher, when you're doom scrolling before you go to bed at night, you're actually not practicing the very thing you're telling people to do.
So true.
So I'm reinforcing, good stuff for myself, for posterity. So I think it's just young artists really, really need to take the time away from the screen to be with themselves. Go for a freaking walk. Read a book. Oh my God, read a book. Not a Kindle, read a book. Piece of paper, open the book, read the book.
Oh, I remember those days.
It's a different way of engaging your brain. Yeah. And your brain and your eyes need a break from those screens. Absolutely.
100%.
I don't know if that was where the tangent was, but I just went there.
I don't know. I think that I do know. And what I know is that that's very relevant. We can't be great artists without being still and listening. You can't.
Yeah.
You cannot. You have to be still. I remember when I lived in New York, I had a teacher who hated my guts. She didn't hate my guts, but she was brutal on me. She was so mean. Oh my God. Like the typical New York fucking brilliant acting coach who was so mean. And I'm like, I'm a highly sensitive empath. Anyway, she had me working with one of her teachers in a small group class where we would do sensory work. And he would literally say, okay, I want you to close your eyes and I want you just to feel the linen in front of you. And I would literally for 20 minutes or who knows how long, you're literally feeling the linen. And I'm thinking, I don't even know what linen feels like. I know I'm older, but I'm not like anyways. But we would be given these different things and we'd be feeling a nose or a face. So we would literally be there for 20, 30 minutes of being present and feeling and sensing. And then other times would be sensing cold, sensing. So you're getting all these sensory memories. But I'm like, that's some of the most powerful work that artists could be doing is sense memory work. Any work that requires you to be still and feel. The problem is, and listen.
I Googled something yesterday. This was in my heart space. Yeah. Why do we experience FOMO? Why do we experience fear of missing out? What do we think that we're missing out on? What is that thing that we have to push ourselves to be? If we don't go there, we're that life-changing thing. No, it's all an illusion. It's driven by marketing tools. Commercials like marketing. The reason there's a degree in marketing is because they're figuring out how to manipulate the mass public. That is actually the degree.
Yeah.
So, in addition to being a consumer, you need to know how to feed your own soul. And as you said, I will definitely shout that from the mountaintops. It is about taking time out to be still. Even if it's just a car, whatever, a drive, a walk, a bike ride. Even sometimes, I remember back in the day when I did have a car, I would get on the subway. That's cool. I would get on the subway and I'd ride the subway for 2 hours. I wasn't going anywhere. I would literally do the loop of the subway and just watch people. It was like character study. I'm like, okay, if I'm ever,
I used to do that in New York.
Yeah, like if I'm ever going to play a homeless guy, like that, look at what is that man's story? Like, obviously not like just trying to be inconspicuous.
Such an actor thing to do. I used to get same.
Yeah, but I would,
I
try
feel
to be
like, I wonder why they hold their
inconspicuous.
shoulder like that. What did they aim
Yeah,
for?
what did
Why are
they?
they, or I wonder why they chose like a blue scarf and not
Yeah,
that, or like, because
why?
that curiosity creates characters and it creates empathy and it creates sensitivity. But it also, like, there's been stuff I pulled from my journals because I would sit there and I would wonder and then I would write stuff down. And sometimes when I have a role, I'm like, because Christopher, I can't believe we didn't even talk about this. Christopher directed me as Miss Hannigan and Annie. And I still remember this one scene. I'm like, you want to go potty? But there's this one thing where I was like on the table and I was like, ooh, kind of, I was, ooh, but my fingers were going, do, 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 do. And I remember that kind of came from something I saw, by one of those observational stuff. And I'm like, I don't know when I would have came up with that weird kind of like, do, 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 do.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know that I would have had that little
yeah,
gesture or that body language had I not been observing and
exactly.
being still, as
You
you
know,
can be on a New York subway.
and they say acting is reacting, right? So when you're in the moment, I mean, the only way that you can react to something is by being present. It's not, otherwise it's the big joke. It's like my line, bullshit, 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 my line, bullshit,
Yeah,
my line, bullshit. Like
100%.
it's an exchange of energy, which is why live theater is so exciting and visceral.
So I have one last question before we go. For anybody listening on any platform other than Substack, please do go to my Substack, bringing Broadway to France. Just go to bringingbroadway-to-france.com because
Bringing
there
Broadway to
to
France.
France
Point
because
home.
welcome and bienvenue, because when you get here, each of these podcasts has actual blogs where you get to see pictures and footage of our guests and all these other fun stuff. So make sure you go to bringingbroadway-to-france.com, subscribe, look at all the fun stuff that we've got there. Okay, Christopher. All right, my darling, we're in the final home stretch. What is a musical that you chose for today you're like, we should highlight this as a great example of how musicals bring humanity? Not that we haven't talked about 10 other musicals today, but what's the one that you picked for today?
Stephen Sondheim and James Lapine's adaptation of the original Grimm fairy tales that were iconically Disneyfied by Walt Disney,
Mm-hmm.
the story Into the Woods, which tells the brilliant tale of husband and wife, a baker and his wife, that desperately want a child. And in the
Yeah.
context of the musical, they realized that the next door neighbor, the witch, who was originated the role by the iconic Bernadette Peters, has placed a spell on their home that their family tree will be barren because the baker's father stole beans from the
That's right.
witch's garden.
Have another bean. Have another bean. That's the witch. That's a role that I would play. Go
A
on.
brilliant role for you. Absolutely. And funny enough, I would play the mysterious man who is actually the narrator and the father of the baker.
Darling, we
So
just need to produce this. Okay,
yeah,
keep going.
exactly. Yeah.
There you go. We'll do it.
So the baker and his wife are tasked with a journey by the witch. They say her one wish is to become beautiful. Because she's been changed to this ugly, gnarly, traditional version of a witch that we have in our head. And if they find the ingredients, they will create a potion that will turn her into her former beauty. So she says, you must bring me back one, the cow as white as milk, that belongs to Jack. Jack and the beanstalk. 2, the slipper as pure as gold, which is Cinderella's slipper. 3, the hair as yellow as corn, which is Rapunzel's hair. And 4, the cape as red as blood, which is Little Red Riding Hood's cape. So they have managed, in the context of this story, to bring all these iconic characters with their own separate storylines collectively together through the conduit of the baker and his wife trying to get these items from these individuals to bring them to the witch for her to create this potion. In the context of the beans, Jack gets these beans, and the beans get thrown away by his mother because he exchanged his cow for magic beans. And she's like, these stupid beans will bring us nothing. And that's the bean that grows into the beanstalk. So we know how that story ends with Jack. He goes up the beanstalk. He gets all these riches and wonderful things. He comes down the beanstalk. The giant pursues him. He chops down the beanstalk, and it falls, and the giant dies. Well, what Jack doesn't know is that another bean has grown. And Act 1 finishes exactly the way that we think Act 1 would finish. Cinderella gets her prince. Little Red Riding Hood finds peace and happiness. Jack gets wealth and riches. And Rapunzel, that's a bit of a complicated one because Rapunzel's actually the witch's daughter. But I won't digress. The point is, another beanstalk has grown. And the wife of the giant descends the beanstalk to come down to the kingdom to seek revenge for her husband's death. And Act 2 is flipped on its tail. And it goes from what we know to be this iconic happy ending to what is a happy ending. And be careful what you wish for. And a vast majority of those characters in Act 2 die. They're slain by the giant. And at the end of it, they do succeed in slaying the female giant, but not without a whole bunch of loss, a whole bunch of carnage, and a whole bunch of very, very hard-earned personal understanding. And what I love about this piece is that it doesn't keep it in this sort of stereotypical genre of everything is happy ever after, which is what classic musical theater, back in the golden age did. It's Sondheim and Lapine were not afraid to deconstruct what is happily ever after. Because those original Grimm's fairy tales actually ended with a lot of gore. There was a lot of gore because they weren't designed to entertain children. They were actually designed as a cautionary tale that if you don't do this, something really bad's going to happen to you. So don't lie, don't steal, be a good little person, right? Or else these horrible things could happen to you. But what I love about this show is that these very, iconic characters that have come up from fairy tale culture, folk culture into, the mainstream, like with Disney, everything gets flipped. And we see that there sometimes isn't a happily ever after. Or what's the price that you pay for that happily ever after? What are the consequences? And that's life. That is the reality. No life is going to be peaches and cream. You can't find the light unless you've lived in the dark. And I just think that show I know a lot of musicals in the canon, but that particular one has such a cherished place in my heart because I think it so brilliantly illustrates a human story in such an accessible, engaging, and entertaining way.
God, I love theater.
Theater.
Christopher, I think you and I could probably talk another 5 hours, but we are now at the end, so people can follow you on social media. Again, if you go to our Substack, bringingbroadwaytofrance.com, it is in the show notes and all the other fun little stuff you can see there. And yes, remember to follow us there and all that jazz. Spread the word if you are all jazzed up about this, if you love it. And a couple of things also in the Substack blog. In each one, I list not only where our guests are, but also I've got a couple of courses. So I have a course called Speak From Your Power. So those of you who are leaders and want to learn about presence and speaking and negotiation and all those things, check that out in the blog. And for those of you who are artists, I also have a course on how to monetize your artistry business, from how to get sponsorships to brand deals to all these other fun things that you probably haven't thought of yet. So go ahead to our Substack at bringingbroadwaytofriends.com. Christopher, I love you dearly, my bestie. Thank you for being here. And we will see you at another podcast soon. I don't know if that was really whatever.
Ciao.
Au revoir. À la prochaine.